Welcome to part 17 of our multi-language adventure game. So today we're looking at the Lua version, and we're going to add a location class and add some locations to the game. So what do I mean by locations? These are the parts of the game that you can go into, so rooms or cells or whatever you want to call them. So for example, you could have a hotel room, or you could have a prison cell, or whatever you are going to create in your game. So you need all of those to make your world up. So that's what we'll be doing today. So we'll need a new class, which is the location class. So let me show you that. So similar to the item class, this one inherits the class library from here, and from there it makes a new class of type location. So this will be where we're going to be storing all of our locations. The new function here, which is the one that acts as a constructor, is going to be passed the name description. So, for example, it could be a hotel room description, a damp hotel room. Then you've got whatever similar locations are to be found to the north, east, south, and west. So those will be empty strings by default. But if they happen to belong to a neighbour, then they will be given the string key for that neighbouring location. Items are the items in that location, so it might be like a key on the floor, or a rock or a torch or something just in the room. And then this one is the item required to enter. So for example, for the hotel room, we might need a key card to enter the room. And then of course at some point we're going to be needing enemies, so we could have the name of an enemy that's somewhere in this location. So as before, we're using the self property here and giving it all of the stuff that we've passed in these parameters here, so that will fill up our class. The only other function in here is this ability to remove a key from a table, which we'll be using at a later date. So I'll leave that in there. Then we've got the trim, which will trim a string, because these don't exist in Lua by default. You have to make your own. So this will trim the end of the string. Then we've got the getters and setters for our location. That's the name, the description, to north, to east, to south, to the west, etc. Then we've got the get items, which gives us back whatever items are stored in this room. Get the item required, get the enemy, and then we've got all the setters for these as well. We've also got an add an item, so that if you're a player and you've dropped something from your inventory, it's now landing in that location. We need to put it into the list so we know that item is now in this current location. Similarly, we've got the remove item. Then we've got a built-in method to display whatever's happening in this location. So it's going to check what exits there are. Then it's going to check whether there's any items in there, and then finally return that data to the calling function. So we'll go through all this in debug mode shortly. So it's a fairly large, complex class, the location class, but we'll see how it runs shortly. Now, main hasn't got anything changed. That's exactly the same as it was before. The game one is we have added some new stuff here. We already had display intro. That's not new. We're not using that or that or that. So the game.load game, that's the same, is we've now got, as before, the player characters. We've now got this create default items, which we had last time, And then there's now an if statement. If create default locations, then we set the current location to, in this case, the hotel room, and then we return the success depending on whether create default locations was successful or not. So the reason that's a Boolean value is that if we were to supply this from a file, some of the hard-coded stuff that's in here won't be used, and if we made an error in the file, then maybe the keys or a location or something to do with it was misspelt, and then nothing would run because it's all messed up. So that just checks whether everything is up to date before running the game. So I've put some stop points in, so we'll go back to main and let's start running and see what happens. So debug mode is on. Do you want to disable debug mode? No, we don't want to do that. So let me just raise this up a little bit so we can see what's showing up. I'll just increase the font here. That's better. So as you can see, as before, we've got the items that we've created. These are the default items, so that's exactly the same as before. Now when I press enter this time, it's going to jump into our create default locations. So let's wind this back down for a minute just to give us a bit more space. That'll do. So we're going to create the first location, which is the hotel room. That's the key. Then we've got the description, and then the location to the north, east, south and west, the items in it, in this case a torch and a book, and then anything an item needed to enter the room, so in this case a key card. So we'll pass that to the add locations here, which is a new function. So we already had add to items from last time, so we can close that one. We're not using add to enemies just yet, so we're running this function here, which is going to add a new location to our locations table. So shared.locations is a table in the shared folder. If I can just double click on that, there it is. So shared locations is an empty table at the moment, so we're going to add to that. So let's go back to game, and then we're going to, as you can see, I've got shared locations, open square brackets, key name, which of course is hotel room. So this is creating a new entry in our table by using the square bracket way of doing things. So and that's equal to a location, which is of course the class name, and then we're passing in hotel room. Then we've got the description, a damp hotel room. To north is nothing, to east is corridor, to south is nothing, to west is nothing. The items in it is a table consisting of a torch and book. The item required is a key card, and enemy is nil. So let's now step into the location class. So that's F10. I was hoping that would step in. It looks like we're going down to the next one. So what we'll need to do to make this work is I'll need to actually put something in. Let's put it here. Yep, okay. So we'll go back to where we were. So so far we've added a new location to that dictionary. Let's see if we can see it at all on the shared locations. Yeah, there we go. So when I put my mouse over the shared locations dictionary, or table I should say, as you can see we've got this one hotel room. There's its description, no enemy, the item required, the items in it, they're all listed within that table, so we can see that that has done its job. So we've got one location in there which is called hotel room. So let's see if we can actually get this one to step in. So we're going to add a new location called corridor. So let's step through the parameters there. That should go into this add to locations, and with a bit of luck it will actually go into the class now. Yeah, there we go, that's better. So we're now inside the location class, and you can see the parameters we passed in. Corridor, a dark corridor with a warm carpet. To the north there's reception. To east there's a lift. To south there's nothing. To west, hotel room. Items in here are key card and key. Item required, nothing. Enemy, nil. So that's going to now be filled in by this these steps here. So if we press F10, that will just simply fill the internal class variables, which are all started with self, with those items. So if I go over, for example, the self.items, it shows you the key card and key. To east is a lift. So that's got the object completed there. So F10 out of that, and so we're going to add now another 2. I'll just put a stop sign here and press the play button. We can undo that, we don't need that. Okay, so we've created now all 4 of our locations, and we want to store the current location in the shared variable here. So at the moment it's an empty string, so as soon as I press F10, shared current location, it should now say hotel room. So we've started off the game. Now the next thing we're going to do is to check out all these locations to make sure that they make sense, so that we haven't misspelt something, that the keys correspond to the locations to the north and south and so on. So let's press F10, and hopefully that will enter check locations. Yes, it has. So the way this works is that we're creating we've got like an internal function here. So we've got this local lib table which is empty, and then this function lib add is going to act as an internal function, so that we can call this little function here from the rest of this. So we'll show you how that works. So if we press F10, that will go past there. It's going to ignore the function because it's not been asked to do anything with it, and then it will go down to the keys, wrong keys, and return value there are all set. So keys is an empty table, wrong keys is an empty table, and return value is currently set to true. So what we're going to do is first of all check whether the locations to the north, to the south, to the east and west actually correspond to a key, to an actual key. So the first thing we need to do is, of course, to get the keys themselves. So there's the shared locations with all that stuff in. So we just want to extract the keys from it. So we're using this for key comma underscore, so we're not interested in the value, we only want the key in the pairs of shared locations. So if we step through there, so we're now in this point here. So the keys, the empty table, and K, if I can get my mouse over it, is hotel room. That's the key of the first of the locations. So we're now going to put it into the keys table by using this table.insert. So if I press F, at the moment, if I put my mouse over the keys table, it's empty. If I press F10, that should have inserted it now into the keys table. And there we are, it's got that first entry in it, hotel room. So we're now going to the next key. And key is now, I can get my mouse over it. Come on. Oh, it flashed a corridor. So the key is a corridor. So we're now going to add that to keys. So I press F10. And then keys has now got 2 entries in it, hotel room, comma, corridor. So I won't struggle with this one, but it's going to obviously get all 4 in. So let's go down to this point here, press that. And so the keys table has now got all 4 of the keys of our 4 locations are in there. Now we're going to check whether the current location has been set to anything or not. As I hover my mouse over it, you'll see the current location's already been set to hotel room. So if it hadn't been set, then we would have had a statement printed out to say the current location has not been set, and then return false. There's an error. Don't carry on. Your game won't work because you've got something not quite right. So this is kind of just like a check to make sure all's going well. Next, we're going to get the items in the keys. What this does is we already know what the keys are. They are hotel room, corridor, reception, and lift. What this little function does is it makes them set to true or false or whatever. So I won't go through that. It's a little function that does it above. So I'll go to that point there, and then we can put the mouse over items, and you can see that we've got corridor equals true, hotel room equals true, lift equals true, and reception equals true. The reason hotel room has got the square brackets around it is that the key here has a space in it, hotel space room. So this is the way Lua handles a key with a space in it. It kind of encloses it in these square brackets. But that's how that works, and that's why it looks slightly different. So what we're going to do now is for, again, key location in the shared locations, which is what we did up here. But up here we were only looking for the keys. Now we're looking for the values, and we're not really bothered about the key. It's the value that we're looking for. So if I press F10, location is now the damp hotel room, enemy nothing, item required, etc., etc. So we've got the full object there inside that variable called location, and the key, of course, if I get my mouse over it, should be hotel room. Yep. No, I can't get that. Oh, here it is. Key is hotel room. So we're now going to find out whether the for each of these locations, we're going to get the north, east, south. Actually, that should be get to the west, shouldn't it? I've just realised I've made an error there. I'll let it run through because it's not going to affect this this check. It's just to make sure that we haven't accidentally misspelt something. So let's go through and see how this works. So we're going to get the north string, which is nothing, empty string. And then we're going to check using this lib add items wrong keys direction. So we're now passing to it the items, which is corridor equals true, hotel room equals true, the wrong keys, which is an empty table, and the direction, which is empty string. And then it's checking if the direction is not equal to an empty string, which this one is, so it's obviously going to skip over it. And then we're returning the wrong keys table. So what this allows us to do is, if we found that we've asked to go in a certain direction and it's supposed to correspond to a particular location, but that location doesn't exist, then this table of wrong keys will get a value or values in it depending on how many things were wrong. So let's step out of that, and we're going to do the same thing again. So we're checking through to see if any of the locations to the north, east, south, and that's supposed to be west, are there, but the keys don't match with an actual location. So that's just kind of an error checking thing here. So we'll step through to that one, down to here. We can undo that, press that. If the length of wrong keys is greater than 0, which it isn't, then you would have this message that there's some errors found when creating the game, the errors, the key name errors, etc., so that you know what you've done wrong. This is important when we start writing a text file to load the game in. This will be a way of checking to make sure it's okay before we try and run it. Then we're going to check next whether if shared debug is running, which it is. So we're now going to print out, if I press F10 again, we're now going to print out the all the locations that we've created. So the first thing we're doing is to set the width to 112. That's just a convenience for this particular width of screen with the console set as it was. Of course, it doesn't actually matter down here because it's not going to show, but it will start printing the stuff out down here. So let's press F10. So then the console, we're resizing. This will not do anything because we're not in a console, so we can kind of skip over that. Then we've got print the dictionary shared location contains the following data, which has appeared down here. Then we're going to do this repeated UTF-8 character there. Let's press F10, which puts this across here. And now we're going to again use the key value pairs in shared locations so that we can get the keys and values of each of the location objects. And they have now been kind of tidied up so that we get the information that we want. So the first line here will give us the key, which is for our first one. Oh, it's nil at the moment. Let's just press F10. Okay. I'm not going to press Shift F10 to get out of this. Oh, it's Control F10. That's it. Control F10. So I won't be stepping through all that lot, but it's using this pad right to print the stuff on there. So let's see if we can finish this line. There we go. So we've got key, hotel room, description, a damp hotel room, and then the rest of this does similar things with the locations to the north, east, west, south. Ignore that. And so let's go right down to this point, and we've finished printing them all out. There we go. So we've got those. There, which gives us all the hotel room, which requires the key card. Then to the north, we've got reception. Then we've got the lift. So it gives us all of the and the corridor. So it gives us all of the debugging data for our thing here. So I think the only thing I perhaps would have preferred to do was to put another line in underneath once we've done that first one. But anyway, that's easily done. So let's come out of there, and then we're going to resize the console there. Let's hit. Okay, so we've done all our printing out of descriptions, and now we're enter to continue there, and the game carries on from there. So that's what the location class does, is it makes these locations for us. I'm not quite sure why that's kind of gone a bit buggy in the middle of this Lua thing here. It's even staying on different screens. Annoying. Right, okay, so just to go through the files again, just so you can see what's new on the main.lua. Oh, the thing in the way is really annoying me. There's no change. I'll tell you what we'll do. I'll just pause and restart this. Okay, so I've restarted the zero brains so that we haven't got that glitch in the middle here. So the main function here, there's not really anything different on there apart from just changing what we're going to be doing in this session. Game.lure, just increase the font. So we've got this, we've done the add to items we did last time. So we've got this add to locations where we've put some code in here to create a location. Add to weapons we're not doing. Then we've done this check locations where we're checking out to make sure that everything is correct. I will, while I think of it, just fix that one there. That's fine. So we've got the checking out whether if we set the location to the north as, for example, room 1 instead of room, and room 1 doesn't exist, then we'd get it put in the wrong keys table to let us know that there's been an error. Then we've got checking out if we have got something in the wrong keys table, then this will print out what the errors are, where they are, how you can fix it. And assuming all's well, then it runs that debug file to put everything out there. I was thinking it would have been nice to put that in between each one, so I might do that. Yeah, let me do that. Control C. Then we're writing that one. Okay, let me save that, and we'll just run it from Windows here. That's our items. Yeah, that's better. We've now got like a separating line between each of those. We don't really need this bottom one now. That's surplus to requirements. But we've got the name and descriptions and everything of our... and you can see how much better it looks when you're running it in a console and not inside an IDE. So press enter to continue, and it's resized. Yeah, that's fine. So that's all working as it's supposed to. Excellent. So we will get rid of this one down here. We don't need that. There we go. So that's the revised code for the check locations function. So I'll leave that there for you to look at. Let's wind this down a bit. There we go. And then the next section. And finally, the shared debug, printing all that lot out. So quite a complex thing just to print out some debugging information, but it'll come invaluable when we start writing our own games in a text file and then running it in this game. We're kind of making this as expandable as possible by anyway, I'll show you that later on. So that's the game there. Okay, so display intro we did last time. Not doing any of this just yet. The load game has got this slight change here in that we've got the create default items as before. Then instead of returning true, which I think is what we did before, we've got this local variable success is set to false. Then we're checking if creating default locations is successful. If it's not, then it'll return false to the game, to the main function, and that will quit without trying to play the game with the errors that have been found all displayed for you to sort out. Assuming that you are successfully loading your game, then of course the introduction will run and you can modify the player. So that's something you had done before. So that's that one. Don't forget to include the location as a require up here. So you've got quite a list of requirements up there now. Main, no change. Location we've been through. Let me just increase the font on that one. So you've got the shared class, and then you're making this new class called location. Then we're this is the constructor here. Then we're filling up all the properties here. At the moment we're not using this table remove or the trim end, so we'll be using some of this stuff later on. So I'll leave it there so you can see it, but not required at the moment. So when they are required, that'll give you another chance to catch up with them if you're not copying this from the GitHub location, which I'll put in the description. Again, we'll be using the display location next time, so it's in there already, but we didn't use it so far. We'll be using that next time round when the game loop actually starts. Okay, so that's pretty much it. So next is the C# version.